Why is job costing important? Without job costing, honestly, you're not really running a business. You're just running a very expensive experiment. Job costing doesn't just tell you what happened. It actually tells you what to charge the next time. By the end of this video, you're going to understand actually how job costing is the one financial discipline that will help crack the code for all the other information in your business. About 20 years ago, I had a friend of mine who grew up in Lubbock, Texas. Have you ever been to Lubbock, Texas? It's flat and perpendicular. The whole town is basically perpendicular streets. And then if you go out of the town of Lubbock, you'll just see agricultural fields for days, it feels like. And so had the opportunity to go out and spend an evening with his family. And one of the things that we had found early on in their farming is they were buying equipment, they were buying seed, they were buying agricultural goods, all of these things to make the farm work, and yet they had no idea if they were making money or not. They were producing crops, they were selling the crops. In fact, in the farming community, there are things called co-ops where they've got pretty well built-in markets to be able to go sell their crops. Now there's constraints, they get fixed fees and fixed amounts and all that. But the bottom line is he really didn't know if he was making money or not. And so what he started to do at his farm is year one, he kind of went all over everything, but then year two, they started to track things. And year three, they tracked again. And by the end of year two and year three, they were able to take those 2 years and run comparisons to not only understand if they were making money or not, but also to inform how they would run their farm the next year. Would they plant these particular crops in these particular places? What were the yields on those places? So they were essentially job costing their farm. And that's exactly what we want you to do as a construction business owner, is begin to understand the information from the past so it will inform the decision-making of the future. Now, before I dive into the details of the job costing, I want you to see this diagram that I have on the page here. If you click on the link in the description below, I've got a powerful masterclass that I have videoed for you as a construction business owner that will teach you how to build a system for your construction business that positions you for that business to run and grow whether you're there or not. Doesn't that sound appealing? I know a lot of you like your work, but you still want that business to run and grow whether you're there or not. So make sure to click on that link below, because in it, what I talk about are the 4 P's of every business, or the 4 foundational cornerstones that every construction business operates on: purpose, people, process, and then profit. The reason I'm showing you this is because the purpose are things like vision, mission, values, your handbook, all of those things that you need to set the direction and the course of your business. It is very likely that you will have employees that fully buy into the mission of what you're doing. For us, it's to liberate owners from chaos, and yet they don't buy into the vision of where you're going. You may want to write that down. That's a little bit profound. The second foundational cornerstone is your people, the things like org charts, job roles, hiring processes, onboarding process, team meetings, performance reviews, all of those sorts of things fall within that people vertical. And again, in that video, I talk in detail about those things. The third is the process foundational cornerstone. And in this is made up of what we call the MSOA, or the 4 core. These are the 4 P's. Within the process, you find the 4 core: marketing, sales, ops, and admin, always in that order, because you can't build something you've not delivered, theoretically. You can't deliver something you've not sold, and you can't really sell anything if they don't know you exist. So they need to know you're there in order to be able to do it. And then finally, the 4th P is the profit vertical. Why am I telling you all this? Because job costing, whip billing, everything to understand the past of your job and the future of your cash all sits within this profit cornerstone right here. So I want you to understand the context. When I talk about job costing, I'm not talking about the full context of your business. I'm just talking about job costing because it fits within one element of your business, and that's the profit element. So how do we do this? All right, let's take the middle part of this graph, and let's imagine the green box is one of your jobs. What you're going to do is you're going to attribute a contract value to that job: 50 grand, 100 grand, 500 grand, 5 million, whatever it is. And then in that, you're going to start tallying the cost of goods as they start to rise, so whatever that looks like. Now, your cost of goods are made up of primarily 4 ingredients. There could be a couple of variances in here, but fundamentally, you'll get 90 to 95% of your cost of goods right if you can get this acronym, SLME, with what looks like an I in the middle to help us pronounce it, into slime. So if you can understand the slime of your cost of goods, then you will be able to understand good job costing, because this is the basics of job costing. Ready? Contract value minus cost of goods leads to gross profit, and out of that we pay all of our expenses and overhead, and from there we can understand, was that job profitable or not. That's the basics of job costing. But here's why that job costing is so important. is because a lot of you, you'll get the contract value and you'll start to get draws down at 50 grand, 100 grand, 200 grand. These checks come in. Money does screwy things with your head. It's a psychological game. And so if we don't take that money and start to subdivide that money into various categories, then what we're going to do is we're going to get that $200,000 receivable, and our mind is going to think that's all ours. Next time you get a receivable, just pay attention to what your mind thinks. Intellectually, of course, you know that's not all yours. You got to pay it to other things. But emotionally, you sort of feel like, oh, okay, I've got some breathing space. You may or you may not. What you may have is just more burden and responsibility when you get that receivable check in. And so that's what job costing helps us to do. By the way, there's another video that I'll link to in the description below where I actually walk you through how to subdivide your bank account. Here's why job costing is so important and why I put it right here in the middle of these 4 Ps. Is because if you don't understand the profitability of a job, then what you start to leak is fuel out the bottom. These 4 boxes have to have fuel that run them, just like your automobile has to have fuel for that automobile to be able to run. Well, what's the fuel? The fuel is the margin that comes from these jobs. The fuel is not the money that goes into the cost of goods or the overhead. The fuel is the margin that now gives you options to be able to go into other jobs. I used to have a contractor that part of their selling point when they would go sit down with a prospect for a custom luxury home was the fact that they had no debt. And for about a year, I kept asking and wondering, why is that such a selling feature? And I couldn't figure it out. And finally, it dawned on me that the selling feature of that contractor not having any debt meant that he didn't owe anything when a big receivable check came in. So he did not have the pressure of wondering, do I apply this to the actual project that this money is actually due for, or do I temptingly take some of that project money that's devoted to this project and apply it to another project? Now, you might call that robbing Peter to pay Paul. The IRS actually calls it stealing, and it is highly frowned upon. We do not recommend it. And so if you have proper job costing, then you understand if there's profitability in that job to be able to apply to that job and maintain margin so you can keep some of that margin separate. And if you need to leverage that margin for other jobs down the road, you can, but that's your margin and not your client's money that they're being able to give to you. So job costing is wildly important, but you've got to create a habit of being able to do that. How do you do that? You set a solid estimate. Don't try to do an estimate just to win a job. You set a solid estimate, and then the days and the weeks during that entire project, you track every expense, put it on a simple spreadsheet. You don't need to make this hard. If you've got software that'll do it, that's great, but most softwares really struggles around job costing, and so you can just do this on a simple spreadsheet, make a line item of every expense that goes into it, and take what you estimated versus what actually happened, put the delta of those two together, and you have the understanding of the profitability of that job. And that profit is what equates to the margin to help keep your business afloat so that you can be liberated from chaos to make time for the things that matter most.